On today's show, it is a crossover edition of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am joined by Locked On Knicks in crossover fashion to discuss the two teams, some questions for the Hawks, questions for the Knicks, how they match up in the playoffs potentially if we get that far, and more. And here we go with that crossover edition right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, guys, as promised, we're lucky enough to be joined by the longtime host of the Locked On Hawks podcast, Brad Rowland. For our Locked On Hawks audience, I'm Gavin Schall of the Locked On Knicks podcast. Brad, pleasure to be doing this again, man. One of these crossovers I look forward to every single summer. You were telling me a little bit about it. I know it's very travel heavy, but how's your summer been? How excited are you to have NBA basketball back in your life in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's been a busy summer for sure. I'm actually, as this is running, I'm not in the country, so it's one of those things where we're jamming it all in. But look, I think everybody that hosts a podcast every day about the NBA is excited about basketball being back, because we wouldn't be doing this otherwise, right?
100%. All right, let's get into the conversation, starting with a former would-be Knicks savior, Kristaps Porzingis. I am incredibly fascinated in his fit on the Hawks. I think it has been under-discussed and underrated by NBA media at large what the upside version of that is. And of course, the reason it's under-discussed is because you kind of have to focus on the upside with Kristaps, given the injury history, given the very mysterious post-viral illness that dramatically affected him in the Knicks-Celtics series. For my money, probably is what swung the Knicks-Celtics series, because as much as the Knicks were able to find answers for Boston in the second round last year, KP was the one guy for 2 seasons running the Knicks just could not figure out how to guard. He was just the accelerant that took Boston from a great team to like a no doubt about it championship winner. Obviously Atlanta does not quite have Boston's infrastructure outside of him, but do you expect him to have like a similar game-changing effect in Atlanta?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, of course, it comes down to his durability. That's kind of implied, especially for a Knicks audience, that they know that very well too. I think the number is he's averaged 50.1 games per season in his NBA career. So you kind of have to bank in 50. Like, it could be 65. That would be nice. It could be 35. You know, it's one of those things. But since the moment of the trade from the Hawks side, I really liked it. Even as it's funny, when he was maybe a few years ago, I was probably a lower person on Porzingis when he was like really in vogue. And now I think to your setup there, like, I think it is an underrated move. I think he's really better than people realize he is now, because I think maybe it's been out of sight, out of mind or whatever. He had the weird illness last year and all those things. And in Boston, he was a supporting player because they didn't really need him to be a star. But this is a guy who still is like a legitimately unique skill set, like the size, the shooting, the rim protection, etc. I've been calling him a ceiling raiser for the Hawks, basically. Like, there's no way. This entire run of the Hawks, like, they've had some good teams, some middling teams, etc. But Trae Young's never played with a player anything like Porzingis. The closest thing they can come up with, actually, it's funny, you'll appreciate this as a Knicks observer, is Danilo Gallinari. Like, late stage Gallinari was like the only like pick and pop threat that was kind of like this. But of course, Gallo is 5 inches, 6 inches shorter and not a rim protector. And offensively, it's kind of similar, but there's just nothing like this. And I'm excited to see it. But also, if he can play 60 games, I think he's like top 50 player in the league when he's on the floor. Like, he's that kind of impact player. So certainly it changes the math of everything. It changes the floor geometry, changes the spacing, the rim protection. And the big question is whether he's going to play. But man, when he does play, I think it's going to really impact basically the entire roster in a big way.
Yeah, a lot of all-in-one metrics have him as like a top 30 to 35 guy on a game-by-game basis. Like, his impact, to your point, I mean, it's him and Wemby, really. And KP at this point is probably an even better shooter than Wemby is. So it is terrifying. I think his defense, like, he's been one of the better rim protectors in basketball over the last couple of years. Certainly in his time on the Wizards, he got much better at attacking switches and attacking mismatches, which I think, depending on the frequency with which, like, and I assume there'll be a lot of it, the Hawks run 2-man actions between him and Trae. That's going to be a key part of his game. And that was something the Knicks, especially like once he was sick, were willing to settle for, and he didn't attack as well as he had in the past. So that's something I'll be watching with him. But man, he is scary when he's at full strength, and you pair him with Trae Young, who at his best is, like, again, as good of an offensive player as there is in basketball. And on his best nights, when his shot is falling, like, that is a terrifying combination. And it just feels like those two plus the Hawks supporting infrastructure. I assume you wouldn't either. We'll talk about at the end of the episode. I'm not picking the Hawks to make the finals. I think they are definitely like a tier below, like Knicks and Cavs one tier, Magic in the next, and then I would probably have like Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee in some order. That being said, in terms of ceiling and like an ability to beat any team in the East, if they're healthy, like I wouldn't be shocked if they beat the Knicks. I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked if they beat the Cavs. Like I think they can beat anyone. And to your point, I think KP is the reason for that. But the people who are the floor setters, obviously Trae, but also those three young wings, right? Jalen Johnson, Zachary Ricochet, and Tyson Daniels. I wanted to isolate this to a question on one of them, but I couldn't decide. So I'll just let you like quickly hit on all three. Like what are the next steps for each of those guys?
Yeah, they're all in different places, which is actually fun. It makes it fun. You can group them together. You can separate them. Jalen Johnson is the guy with the highest upside, I think, of that group. And my favorite stat this summer about Jalen, he's one of 5 players in the NBA last year that averaged 19, 10, and 5. Now, he only played half the season, so maybe, a small asterisk there, but it was basically him and a bunch of the, like, hub big men, Giannis, Jokic, Şengün, and Sabonis. That was the list. And the assist there is the big part of it, too. Averaging 5 assists a game as a non-primary is a very impressive thing. But the rebounding, Jalen Johnson is like a very quietly, basically elite rebounder. Mm-hmm. Short of Giannis, he's the best rebounding forward in the league. And I'm not exaggerating that by the numbers the last year and a half or so. So that's in his grab and go ability, et cetera. The big thing with him is durability, too. Like, it's not to the Porzingis level of, like, proven questions there. Whereas Jalen just got hurt. He tore his labrum. He's back full go for training camp. And he's a guy who's already signed. Like, they're comfortable with him. They love him. And I think he kind of, he's certainly he's been their number 2 guy, but there is a world in which he's their best player in a year or two. That wouldn't stun me. And even as a Trae Young guy, and I think I'm higher on Trae than most. I think Jalen Johnson's upside, not saying he's going to get there, but upside is considerably, all-star perennial kind of level if he gets there. And this year will tell us a lot about that, whether that's possible or not. Tyson Daniels had the breakout last year, most improved player, defensive player of the year, runner-up, all those things. And, defensively, I think everyone knows the story now. Like, he was just ridiculous last year, led the league in steals by this comical margin, deflections. He's not just a steals guy. That's the thing I think that gets lost on the outside. There are a lot of guys who, I won't name names on this podcast, over the years who have been like, I would call steals merchants, sure. Like guys that are up there in steals but are not great defenders. Dyson is not that. Like, he was able to get steals while also being an awesome, like, 99th percentile in synergy isolation defense, for example. Like, guys that can do both are really hard. And then offensively, I think he's underrated, honestly. He averaged 14 points a game last year and on a reasonable efficiency. He's not a great offensive player right now, but he certainly has some offensive skills. He's a former point guard. He's a good passer, can drive. Very intriguing player, and I think a guy who can actually make another leap. Maybe not as big of a leap as last year, but certainly more incremental gains, particularly on offense. And then, of course, Ricochet is the number 1 pick. It's so funny that he's not discussed that way, and I get it. That draft was not very good, but he's still a high pedigree guy, and what team in the league is not looking for 6'9" forwards who can dribble, pass, shoot, and defend? Like, he may not be an all-star, but, like, that skill set gets paid. That skill set is in high demand. Name your favorite, whatever. Obviously the Knicks have 2 of those guys who are highly paid wings who are not like superstars on the ball. Ricochet is like kind of in that vein. Like, he's not quite there yet, obviously, at age 20, but you don't have to fast forward too far to see him as a perennial like $30 million a year kind of player. And it may not be like, number 1 overall pick, 25 points a game, but that's an awesome skill set. So long-winded, but those 3 guys certainly make a lot of what the Hawks do happen, basically. Like, Trae and Jalen and particularly Porzingis are like the pillars, but in the middle, surrounding Trae Young in particular with 3 guys who can defend and be long and athletic, it's definitely secret sauce for the Hawks. And you throw in Alexander Walker too, who they went and signed. Like, they really have 4 of these guys now.
Yeah, it is exciting, and Ricochet in particular, I think I was surprised by just how confident he was. Like, I thought it was going to be a bad rookie year. I thought he was going to get crapped on. I thought the Hawks were going to get crapped on for that pick. And he was just like a very solid NBA rotation guy for day one, which even for guys with higher ceilings, it's just like a very difficult thing to achieve in year one. So he impressed me a lot. That whole group is impressive. I have one more question about the Hawks defense. We're going to get into it in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Hawks.
A lot of people can't even name their financial accounts or even what they are worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. If you have the full picture, you actually leave money on the table. And that is why Monarch Money should be coming into your life. It's the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface, either on your laptop or on your phone. And Monarch is built for people like me with busy lives, quite honestly. If you've been putting off your organizing your finances for a long time, Monarch is definitely for you. They do the heavy lifting for you at Monarch Money. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet yourself. For me, I linked all my accounts together to Monarch Money and immediately spied some easy costs to get rid of. Cancel those commitments alone, saving money each and every month. You can maximize your investments, increase your savings rates, easily review your finances with your financial advisor, even with your partner, and generally keep a clear review of your financial health, both in the short term and in the long term. Do not let a financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com, and use that code LOCKEDONNBA. Some firms do it all: divorce, criminal, real estate, and sometimes they might even do injury cases. That, though, could cost you. Without the right focus, you may never get the attention that you actually deserve. But John Foy Associates, they focus 100% on personal injury law. Car accidents, truck crashes, serious injuries, that is it. Whether you call them, you're not just getting a lawyer that's juggling different types of cases. Instead, you're getting a team that's built to win for you. They treat every client with dignity, compassion, and respect, and they're available 24/7 to take your call. And the best part is, you pay absolutely nothing until John Foy wins your case with no upfront costs whatsoever. If I get into a wreck, I know exactly who I would call, and that is the strong arm. John Foy Associates has helped thousands of different clients get justice and real money in their pockets in the past. And if you've been injured in a car accident by a negligent driver, do not let the insurance company rip you off. Get the justice and money that you deserve by calling John Foy Associates today at 404-400-4000. That is 404-400-4000, or by visiting johnfoy.com to get started. They don't just settle, they win. Get the strong arm. Call Attorney John Foy Associates today.
All right, so I think in the Trae Young era, the defense, fairly or not, has always been the question about Atlanta. Last season, slightly below average on defense, slightly below average on offense, 18th in defensive rating, 17th in offensive rating. Again, like maybe you disagree with me on this, and feel free to tell me. Like I'm more confident, and maybe KP's health is just such a swing factor in this, but that the Hawks are going to be an above average offense next year. I think you get a bounce back shooting season from Trae Young. Obviously, just a full year of Jalen Johnson makes an immense difference on that end of the floor. Even if you get the downside case of KP, like the 40 games he plays, you should be close to an elite offense. Defensively, what are your expectations for this group? Because we talk about all those wings. Obviously, Dyson's a sure thing. Jalen's very good. Between KP and Onyeka Okongwu, you have like a really solid, I would say, defensive big man rotation. Feels like there's a little bit more depth there. Nah, certainly good. Like he was the guy who got the job on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for most of that Western Conference Finals. Luke Kennard, there are some more questions, but like most bench scorers are not very good defenders. Yeah. I say all this to say, like, do you think, are you pretty confident Atlanta is solidly above league average defense next year?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right to say an earned reputation in the last 5 years, 6 years of the Trae Young era is like, okay, they might be awesome on offense, but they're going to be bad on defense. And they kind of earned that. And the one time they weren't, they made the conference finals. Mm-hmm. Like if you go by the numbers, that season was their best defensive season, but also from like midseason on, they were like a top 10 defense. Clint Capella was flying around, his prime him. And anyway, they've been very ordinary or bad defensively for most of the last half decade. I think last year took huge steps forward, which you alluded to. Like it might sound funny to say that's a huge step forward to be 18th, but it was. Like they were in the bottom 5 a couple times before that. Dyson makes a huge difference. But yeah, it's the depth factor. Porzingis defensively is not like a game changer, but certainly is a good rim protector, better than what they had before. Alexander Walker gives them one more guy. Now they have either Daniels or Alexander Walker on the floor all the time, and that's a huge thing to have in your backcourt, especially when you are built around Trae Young. And you mentioned Kennard. Kennard's their 8th guy, like you said it, but like he's not going to. But yeah, I think they're going to be good defensively. How good might impact their ultimate ceiling. I think when you're building around Trae Young, you're still an offense first team. That's still the case, I think, on this roster. But they've intentionally built this team, other than Luke Kennard, every other guy that's in their inner circle of like going to be playing every game are all projected to be either average or better defenders, other than Trae. Like Trae's the guy, of course, that's a weakness. But yeah, I think the theory of the case for the Hawks this year is maybe not like number 2 in the league on offense like they were 5 years ago because they do have some more defensive first players, Daniels, Alexander Walker, etc. But they added shooting. That was a huge priority with Porzingis, Alexander Walker, and Kennard. That helps the offense. And then defensively, they just have all this length and it's interchangeable. They're well coached defensively. So yeah, I think they'll be more like, 12th defensively, like not like they're going to be 5th, but certainly like I think average or better is a fair projection for this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. They have that Pelicans pick coming in a year, man. Atlanta, it was like a quick turnaround from, geez, I don't know what this is. And obviously there are still questions there with the Trae Young extension, just in terms of what direction they want to go as a team. Yep. But like, this was like just as quick and subtle of, I don't even want to say a rebuild, but kind of a reload just into being a good team again. Like as you'll see in the NBA, it's really impressive what they've done. I'm sad it came at the expense of my guy Landry Fields, but man, Atlanta's cooking right now. Brad, what do you want to know about the New York Knicks?
Yeah, first I like Landry too, and Knicks legend. So shouts to Landry, who was part of a lot of what happened over the last couple of years. Look, this is not going to be new to you. But I was prepping on the Knicks, and I'm thinking, there isn't that much to the roster that's changed. There's some little changes, of course. I have to ask the obvious question beyond that: the coaching change. Sure. Like I like Mike Brown. Full disclosure, I think Mike Brown's good. But what do you make of just the change from Tibbs, who we kind of know what Tibbs is, but most of Tibbs is good. Most of Tibbs' routine is a positive one. It's proven. Mike Brown's proven in a different way. That's the biggest change to me, looking up from the outside of the Knicks. I don't know if you agree with that, but if you do, tell me. And if you don't, why isn't it? And what do you kind of envision from the change between Thibodeau to Mike Brown?
No, I think it definitely is the single biggest change, and it's the biggest thing for me when Tom Thibodeau was fired was, all right, why was he fired? Because I had my reasons why I would have moved on from him. Like the biggest thing was that he insisted on playing a starting five that either just didn't work because of the personnel or he couldn't make work schematically. Like they were a net negative post January 1st, played 500 more possessions than any other lineup in the NBA. Apologies to the Locked On Knicks fans listening, because I feel like I mentioned that stat maybe because I've been doing a lot of these season previews, but I think 3 or 4 out of our 5 episodes a week. So apologies.
We all do it, man. We all do it. We have to repeat stuff. It's just what's the name of the game.
Yeah, to me that is the number. And then that group obviously started until Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals, was a net negative throughout the playoffs. The change was ultimately only made because Josh Hart kind of put himself forward and said, "Coach, I think we need to try something else." They went to Mitchell Robinson. It sort of worked. But that was just kind of a microcosm of just the rigidity and lack of flexibility that Tom Thibodeau had, that both made him like far and away the best Knicks coach in the last 25 years. But I think ultimately capped the Knicks ceiling and made it so, at least in my mind, I don't think the Knicks were ever going to win a championship with Tom Thibodeau. Obviously the minute stuff was a concern for the players. I don't think a lot of the guys on the team, and this is less so reporting and more so my gut instinct and trying to just glean stuff from the reporting, I don't think a lot of the non-Brunson Hart guys always felt heard from Tibbs. And I think you were right away seeing, even though Mike Brown brings like a lot of the same stuff as Tom Thibodeau in terms of an ability to build a culture, like a certain level of like competency throughout, a guy who's been there, done that, veteran, highly successful NBA head coach, like you immediately see just like a better relationship and with some of the players. Like obviously Tibbs was great with Jalen. He was great with Josh. I don't want this to turn into crap on Tibbs. He's like, all those guys say for the most part nothing but positive things about him, but it does seem like there is a closeness there with Mike Brown. Beyond that, I think you get more lineup versatility. I think you get more schematic versatility. They're going to play, or at least the intention is going to be that they're going to play with a lot more pace in the half court. There's an expectation Jalen Brunson will be off the ball a little bit more, which when you just look at guards, and this will be a concern with Trae Young one day, guards of like that are smaller and just have like close to league high workloads, ideally into their early 30s. You want to start cutting into that and lessening that. And I think that is one of Mike Brown's goals. He's already come out and said like he's not going to chase wins. He's not going to do the Tibbs thing where the Knicks are up by 20, down by 20 with all 5 starters playing their 43rd minute in a February basketball game. So I think all of that is exciting. Whether or not it results in a championship, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, you pull up the basketball reference page and you see the 5 guys averaging 35 minutes or more, and like no one does that other than this one particular coach. So I was fascinated by that. The other thing is it's obviously much more low profile, but like I feel like they have a million guys at the end of this bench, end of the roster, non-guarantees, et cetera, that are like familiar faces, even to Hawks fans. Like Garrison Matthews is on this roster right now, on the training camp roster. Alex Len is a former Hawk, but also guys that I talked about this summer as like potential Hawks targets or free agent. Like Malcolm Brogdon was like a guy that I don't know why he signed with the Knicks. I'll never understand that. Maybe you can tell me why. But is it? it seems logical to me that it's like an emphasis, generally speaking, on having more depth and using more depth, and also being the Knicks to be able to command that when you're a good established team. But like, what led in your mind to like having not like an embarrassment of like awesome players, but guys who are real NBA players are on non-guaranteed contracts on this team, like battling it out for the last 2 roster spots. And it's like, how did they kind of get here where they have this many guys who are real NBA players?
Yeah, so Brad, the Knicks have started working with this company called Aspiration. I don't know if you've heard of it. Malcolm Brogdon's going to be in Central Park every day, planting trees, getting his hands. No. Yeah, it's a good question. I do think it's a combination of the fact that the Knicks have obviously like New York alluring market, but they finally have something to sell, and like one just like a little bit of room to maneuver this summer, but like just a track record of competency under Leon Rose now. And I think last season getting to the conference finals, beating the Boston Celtics was even further proof of concept that I think would have come a year earlier, if not for just a myriad of injuries that, for my money, maybe sour grapes to the Knicks fans, caused the Knicks to lose to the Pacers in 23-24. But it came a year later. The Knicks beat the Celtics. They got to the conference finals. Jalen Brunson, I think, just at this point has a playoff track record like about as good as any small guard in NBA history. Like, you could just remove that caveat and say, like, as a scorer, as a crunch time performer, like he's up there with anyone in the NBA at this point. And I think that is attractive to veterans. That being said, like the confusing part about it, and the part that's had us doing like the windhorse fingers here on the Locked On Knicks podcast, is like, are they really going to play 10 guys? And some of that is definitely Tom Thibodeau PTSD, where we didn't know that was allowed just in the rules to play 10 guys in your rotation. And Mike Brown has said this preseason, 9.5, 10 guys. And often coaches are a little optimistic and go towards the higher end of that number in the preseason. But to your point, just in terms of the roster crunch, for both Brogdon and Landry Shamet to make the team, forget about Garrison Matthews, who's underrated and was one of just like the elite corner 3-point shooters. I think the elite corner 3-point shooter in the NBA last season. They're going to have to trade one of Tyler Kolek or Pacome Dadier on a team that is starved for draft picks going forward, starved for youth going forward. That is a real hit. Personally, I feel like it would make a lot more sense to trade Kolek because he's 4 years older. He's a guard. They have 1 million guards, not a wing. A lot of the rumors have centered around Dadier, so we will see what ultimately happens with that. I have to presume that the Knicks promise definite minutes to Clarkson, definite minutes to Brogdon, definite minutes to Gershon Yabusele. And if you look at what that does to the rotation, they go from 3 guys in the top 10 in the NBA in minutes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, where no one on the roster is playing more than 32 minutes a game, maybe other than Jalen Brunson, but with Deuce McBride as well. Like, I don't even know how you make that work. So it's a great question you ask. I don't totally know the answer beyond these guys want to win a championship. They see a good fit. They like the culture the Knicks have built, and they're willing to accept, like, maybe not an every night role, but for someone like Brogdon, that is mystifying, because I think he can still be, if healthy, like a solid 8th guy on a very good basketball team.
Yeah, Hawks fans were clamoring for Brogdon too, because they don't have a traditional point guard on this roster behind Trae Young, of course. And Brogdon's from the area. It's like, hey, what about? And then he signs a non-guaranteed deal in New York, and people are like, what's going on here? That's all he can get. I'm sure it's a multi-layered situation, but you're right. It's having playing time to offer and not having to put a bazillion miles on OG and Mikal and even Josh Hart, who never wants to come off the floor. Like, it'd be probably helpful for those guys long term, or even short, even medium term, if they're not playing
all the terms, every term,
all the terms.
Yeah. Josh said as much yesterday. He said he was exhausted in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was like, no crap. Like, it was 2 years of him playing every game, playing 38 minutes a game. That is not how Josh Hart, maybe the highest energy player in the NBA, is ideally used. But Brad, I want to get into the matchup. Is this, you might not have heard, this has been a little bit of a rivalry between these two teams over the last couple of years. We'll talk about that in just a sec on Locked On Knicks and Locked On Hawks.
The NFL season is here. FanDuel has an offer that you absolutely do not want to miss. And right now, if you are a new customer with FanDuel, bet just $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's right. Pick a bet right now, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. FanDuel is great in so many different ways. One reason is that it actually fits however you like to bet on sports, whether it's player props, parlays, same game parlays, perhaps straight bets, whether it's point spreads, over-unders, money lines, etc. They have futures, even live betting as the action unfolds. It makes watching football or basketball or baseball even more exciting when you have a little bit something extra riding on the action. They have all sports you can think of across the board, football to the NBA, of course, we're talking about all the time on this podcast. Plus, they have baseball, they have hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, both domestic leagues, international leagues, etc. They have F1, they have NASCAR, boxing, MMA, and so much more. Whether you're a casual fan or just someone who loves looking at the stats, perhaps, FanDuel makes it and the whole gambling experience so much better for you. FanDuel is quick, it's easy, and they are fast to pay out when you win. It's the best possible way to add a little bit more energy to your game days. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app and get started today.
All right, we are back, crossing it over. Locked on Knicks, Locked on Hawks, wrapping up this one. The Knicks-Hawks rivalry. So the last 9 games, the Knicks won 3 straight, the Hawks won 3 straight, the Knicks won 3 straight. The Hawks play-in victory, not playing, in season tournament.
NBA Cup, of course.
NBA Cup, Jesus Christ. Yeah, too many things. NBA Cup victory over the New York. I feel sparked existential questions in New York. The conversations were not good after. People didn't understand what was going on with the defense. Why, Tom Thibodeau didn't think it was wise to have Mikal Bridges attack Trae Young and make him pay for being the one out there on Mikal Bridges. And the Knicks obviously figured that matchup out. I think a big part of it, and we could talk about how much of this was real, how much of this was just 2 great games from a star, was Jalen Brunson figuring out the Dyson Daniels matchup out. Dyson has absolutely locked down in the first 2 games. Jalen combined for 35 total points in the first 2 games, and proceeded to average 35 points per game over the last 2 matchups that he was able to play in between the 2 teams. That's something we should touch on. I want to start off with the Trae Young, Kristaps Porzingis pick and roll, pick and pop, because as I alluded to earlier, the Knicks just have very few answers at times to Kristaps Porzingis, at least in his time on the Boston Celtics. At least with Jason Tatum, you could switch that and just have the right body type on the back end of that matchup. And Cat has done a fairly good job holding up with Trae. In particular, I think in the 3rd game of the season, the one that was 149, 148 that the Knicks won in overtime. Cat was just fantastic guarding Trae in overtime. I don't know if that's something you want to rely on, being something that works every single time. I know I'm asking 5 questions in one, but I'm also interested in your perspective on how that works for Trae, where he was just so good in that dance with Onyeka Okongwu. I think it was that same game where the entire second half, it was just dunk, dunk, dunk. And Trae had maybe 14 assists in the second half of that game. And if you think KP can also be a downhill threat rolling, will Trae be as comfortable playing pick and pop, maybe more matchup hunting type of game versus straight downhill pick and roll, where I think it's basically him and Luka as the 2 best manipulators going downhill with the lob big in the NBA. Obviously, he will still get a lot of time with Onyeka, but I'm curious what you think about that 2-man action, and in particular, how you would defend it if you were the Knicks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it, for one thing. Thanks for recording this. It's one of the talking points just in a vacuum, much less against the Knicks. And I think it applies against the Knicks too, is that because we haven't seen Trae with a pick and pop big that often. There were times with John Collins where John Collins was pick and popping a lot, but still they like to pick and roll. That was the number one thing. Trae ran the most pick and rolls in the league last season. That's the stat that's making its way out there. It certainly makes a lot of sense. And I think that Porzingis is capable of being a roll man. He's shown that the length that he has, but he's not his number one mode of being in the pick and roll is he doesn't want to always dive. He wants to pop some, post up some, etc. And Okongwu was more conventional that way, despite being 6 inches shorter than Porzingis. He's much more conventional. Yeah. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think that Trae, as good as he is, he's very good at doing both and kind of manipulating within a game and kind of finding that comfort level. If you had said what you said earlier, I would have said it as well about that little groove he found against the Knicks a couple times where it was spamming almost, but not spamming the same thing. Finding the counters. Trae is so versatile in running that, and I think it's also how do you defend it in that if you try to play 2 wings against him and Porzingis is going to beat you up with that, which you alluded to there. I think he's the kind of post-up threat the Hawks haven't really had. I'm not sure how much they're going to use that. Quinn Snyder's not huge as a post-up guy, but I think if you have a matchup that you're going to need to go to, he's willing to go to it. And teams have long, and this is definitely what the Knicks did as well, started putting wings on Trae. Basically, almost no one has guards on Trae. Maybe you'll see Miles McBride on him some. I'm sure you would during that matchup. But primarily, it's going to be one of the wings most of the time. And I think that does allow the Knicks some versatility if Cat can hold up, which you said perfectly. It would be a lot of spamming that. And if Cat can hold on Trae, then Knicks will probably be fine. If he can't, they won't. And it's not quite that simple, but it kind of is that simple. And they might run more with Jalen Johnson. If the Hawks can run 1-4 pick and roll, and then you're not attacking Cat as much then. But then if Cat's your help side defender, not necessarily his best thing in the world, and you have Porzingis spacing to 30 feet on the other side, worse Towns going to be. And if he's going to be the help, that's kind of the pickle that the Hawks are trying to put teams in general, is like, if you have a center who can shoot from 30 feet away, you can either use him as the primary role guy or the space guy with Jalen Johnson, or small pick and rolls. Again, long response to a long question, but I don't know. I think that's going to be interesting. I think the Knicks' defensive tendencies, I'll be fascinated by, as just an NBA observer. Like, what's that going to look like compared to what it looked like under Tibbs? Like, what's Brown going to emphasize? Because you still have Brunson too. It's kind of these teams are not exactly mirrors of each other, but the Knicks try to hide Brunson, the Hawks try to hide Trae, and that little cat and mouse game on both sides is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it'd also be interesting, right, if the Knicks do decide to start Mitchell Robinson, because unlike Cat, who like struggles like guarding the driver, guarding the roll man simultaneously, and Trae is just like, sorry to keep raving on about this. Hopefully Hawks fans appreciate it, but like just creating ambiguity when he's in the air, and like, is he gonna lay it in? Is it a floater? Is it a lob? And you just don't know until the ball's out of his hands, and really until like it's on its way down. Like, is that going in the net, or is that going up? And we're about to hear Onyeka Okongwu just rocking the rim. Like, that is so difficult. Mitch, unlike Cat, and this is like going back to 5 years of trauma of Mitch not being healthy for that 2020 series, I think he would have been a difference maker, because that was right when he was turning the corner as a drop defender. And I'm hoping Mike Brown, unlike Tom Thibodeau, just accepts that, like, if it is Onyeka in the game or it's KP like rolling, you can't have Cat and drop. These Trae's just too good. It is going to be dunk after dunk. Mitch you can have and drop, and Mitch can do a good job in that. But to your point, if Mitch is in, then maybe you just push KP outside, you run 1-4, and you say, all right, Mitch, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay home? Are you going to give up open threes? Like, it is a conundrum, and it is something that is going to really challenge the Knicks. I had a question about, like, I don't know if you have any, like, I'll let you talk about it if you want. Do you have any thoughts on the Dyson-Jalen matchup? Like, to me, there's not anything there other than, like, one of the 5 best isolation offensive players in the NBA going against one of the 5 best isolation defenders. And Jalen will get some of those matchups. Dyson will get some of those matchups. I don't know if there's anything new with that.
No, I think you're right. I mean, we could talk about it, but it'll be must-see TV. I think that the only thing that I think would be really interesting to point out is that it isn't just Dyson.
Yeah. Now
they have Nikhil, who could also be a change-up if for some reason Brunson's gotten comfortable against Dyson, which you said earlier, and you're right, did happen at times last year. You could throw Nikhil and Dyson are similar, but they're not exactly the same, and maybe that will change up, and having 2 guys who are uniquely, I would say, set up to defend a small guard like Jalen might be. I mean, is there a team in the league that has 2 guys like Dyson and Nikhil?
Probably the Thunder, but outside.
The Thunder are just almost in a different league at this point, like different association.
It's a great question.
You're right.
It was the Celtics who had could throw Drew Holiday, Derek White, like Tatum if they wanted to on him. But that is, and at times, like, not so much in the playoffs because he just finds another gear, but in the regular season, like, that is where you can bother Jalen, is like different body types, fresh legs, and just guys who have a chance, because it just feels like maybe some of this was just the minutes Tom Thibodeau played him. Like, he was eventually going to get to the matchup he wants. And of course, like, they probably will try to hunt out Trae Young, like we talked about it, but it was some, like, Tom Thibodeau, at least in the first couple of games, was not very consistent in just being like, all right, I'm just going to run 2-man actions between Brunson and Mikal. And that is like the Knicks version, I guess, of like that 1-4 pick and roll. And it's really interesting to see how the Hawks respond to that and whether they try to hedge and recover, because the Knicks weren't always good at just being very like quick hitting and being predatory and attacking a mismatch. And some of that's on Mikal, who just showed like a distinct lack of physicality, would go 8 game stretches without shooting a single free throw. So I think he is really like a swing point in the matchup. But if he could have great games against the Hawks, that could be the difference maker between the 2 teams. But I also wanted to know before we left, just like broadly, what are your expectations for how Atlanta finishes this year? Because I said before, I think I haven't done my like write it down what everyone's seed's going to be. I think I'd have them at 4 ahead of Milwaukee. I think I have them behind Orlando, but I maybe ahead of Milwaukee. Them versus Detroit is really interesting. I think Detroit will have like a little bit of trouble reintegrating Jaden Ivey, and that's sort of a question I have. I'm weirdly confident that the Hawks, it's going to come together fast, and they're just going to be a real issue for other teams on a night-to-night basis. But are you as high or even higher on your own team?
Maybe I have. It's not even necessarily that I'm higher. I think I'm a little bit lower on Orlando than everybody else seems to be.
Sure.
Like I have the Hawks and the Magic kind of in their own tier at the 3-4 spot, maybe a half tier above. I think certainly Detroit could get there. Milwaukee, if Giannis plays 78 games, could get there. etc. Like, I don't want to act like there's just massive gulfs between these teams, but certainly I'm going to have the Hawks either in that somewhere in that 3-4 range before the season starts. And there is variability, like we talked about at the very beginning. Not to litigate the whole thing, but if Kristaps plays 30 games, I would certainly knock my projection down. So if we knew that ahead of time, if he plays 65, you start dreaming big. If you're the Hawks, it's not just that simple. You got to have Trae stay healthy, all those things. But yeah, I think this is probably the best roster the Hawks have had at any point in the Trae Young era. I know they made the conference finals, but this roster coming into the season is better than the one that made the conference finals. So does that mean it's going to translate into success? No, but I think a projection, somewhere in the high 40s of win total in a relatively weak Eastern Conference behind, Cleveland and New York. Like, yeah, I think they're going to be right there, and it would not surprise me at all if you look at the Hawks are the 2 seed, 3 seed, and they're playing in the conference finals. Like, I'm not saying that's a projection that you would make, but given all the teams in the East, Knicks included, Cavs included, have vulnerabilities that like no one. There's no Thunder. There's not even really a Nuggets in the Eastern Conference. I think it's pretty wide open. Should be fun.
Yeah, I think that is a fair assessment. I think I have the Knicks a little bit closer to that Denver tier. I think Oklahoma City is just in a different stratosphere than anyone else, and it's almost fair to discuss them like you discussed the Kevin Durant Warriors, where is it them or the field? I think maybe it's them, but I don't know. And I'll just one final note on Atlanta, and I mentioned earlier, they do have that Pelicans pick. So if mid-season things are going really well, they want to make an all-in move. Again, that plus one or two of those wings could get you a lot. I don't know who the player is necessarily, and it would take a lot because Atlanta is very young, and they probably do want to keep that pick and make that pick given how good this draft is, and that it could potentially be in the top 3. I don't know, Joe Dumars, you're crazy. Why did you help Atlanta like that? Anyways, that is exciting for Atlanta. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be a potential playoff matchup, maybe even in the conference finals between the two teams. That would be electric. Brad Rowland, can you let everyone on the Knicks side know where they can find all your fantastic work if they want to continue to learn a little bit more about the Hawks?
Locked on Hawks is the place primarily. I'm at BT Rowland on social media. I have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/BT Rowland as well. But Locked on Hawks is the primary place. If you're a Locked on Knicks, you know the deal. It's just the same thing with Hawks instead of Knicks. We're all here. We're having fun together.
Yeah, same thing on the Knicks side, guys. We'll talk to you very, very soon on Locked on Knicks and Locked on Hawks.